Hey there! In this video, we're going to be looking at transformers, which was requested by Sonia Fredericks that wrote, "Can you please do transformers?" So without further ado, let's dive into this video. Welcome to Rise Up Namibia. My name is Metyanata, aka the Resistor of Bad and the Lover of Good, hashtag dark and lovely _ walk by faith and not by sight. So, on screen, we have a typical exam question in regards to transformers. So feel free to pause the video and try out the questions from A to D and see if you get the correct answers. Okay? So pause the video now. Okay. So, the first question. Name the type of transformer in the diagram above. So this is a step-down transformer. Why? Because the number of turns on the primary coil is more than the number of turns on the secondary coil. If you check on the primary coil, we have 200 turns, but on the secondary, we only have 25. So if we were having more on the secondary than on the primary, it would have been a step-up transformer. But in this case, this one is a step-down transformer. Okay? Now B states, name the part labeled A. So that will be a soft iron core. Then for C, calculate the potential difference across the secondary coil when an alternating potential difference of 120 volts is supplied to the primary coil. Okay, now for such questions, you always want to make sure, what are you asked to calculate? You're asked to calculate the potential difference across the secondary coil. Okay, now that you are sure, for this type of question, we use this formula. Okay, so I recommend you memorize this formula. And then when you're asked to calculate something, you just make that specific something subject of the formula. For example, this potential difference across the secondary coil. Okay, so before we do that, let's write all of them on the side here, which is the VP, NP, VS, and NS. Now that we have done that, let's quickly go through them. What does VP mean? Now remember in the previous videos, I told you V stands for potential difference. Okay, so here the P only stands for primary coil. So VP reads potential difference on the primary coil. So the same with VS. VS simply means potential difference on the secondary coil. Okay? What does NP mean? N simply means the number of turns on the primary coil. So which is here. Okay? Then NS means the number of turns on the secondary coil, which means it's here. Okay, now with that said, let's quickly check again. What are we asked to calculate? We are asked to calculate the potential difference across the secondary coil. Now we know that the potential difference is V. Now, are we calculating VS or VP? Which one do you think we are calculating and why? We are calculating VS. Why? Because we are asked potential difference across the secondary coil. So this S stands for on the secondary coil. If this was potential difference across the primary coil, we would have used VP. But since it's saying secondary coil, we are using VS. Okay, so here we go to VS and we put a question mark to say this is what we are calculating. Now, given that you have put a question mark at VS, this means that VP, NP, and NS, those figures are somewhere, if not on your diagram, then they are in your statement. Okay? So let's quickly fill in the other figures. What is VP? VP is the potential difference on the primary coil. So let's check, is it on the diagram? No, it's not on the diagram. So let's go to the statement and reread. Calculate the potential difference across the secondary coil when an alternating potential difference of 120 volts is supplied to the primary coil. So this is what we are looking for. We are looking for the potential difference on the primary coil. So it's 120 volts. So let's write that down. Then you ask yourself, what is NP? So NP is the number of turns on the primary coil. So go on your primary coil. How many turns do you have there? You have 200. So you write 200 down. Then we move to NS. What does NS stand for? Number of turns on the secondary coil. So we go to the secondary coil. How many turns do we have here? 25. So we write down the 25 there. Now that we have written all other figures in, let's go back to the formula and make Vs the subject of the formula. So how do we do this? Now I'm going to show you how to do this, but just for some background knowledge, if you have never done it, you can check the link down below in the description, which is from our math video on some simple examples on how to make a certain letter subject of the formula. Okay? So to make Vs subject of the formula, we are going to say, now since these two are fractions, we can basically start by cross multiplying. So we'll have Vs multiplied by Np, and then is equals to Vp multiplied by Ns. Now what are we trying to make subject of the formula? Vs. So where is Vs? Vs is here on the left. Now we want to cancel or get rid of Np. How do we do this? Because these two are multiplied, we can cancel out Np by dividing by Np. Now remember, whatever you do on one side, you need to do it on the other side of the equal sign. So we also need to divide that side by Np. Now on the left hand side, Np will cancel out and you'll be left with Vs is equals to Vp multiplied by Ns divided by Np. So this is the formula you're going to use. So now you ask yourself, what is Vp? Vp is 120, so you write that down, multiplied by, what is Ns? Ns is 25, so you also write down that 25, divided by, what is Np? Np is 200, so you write down the 200, then 120 multiplied by 25, divided by 200 will give you 15 volts. And that's your final answer for C. So let's just write it down here. Now for E, okay, before we get to E, Vs, let's just write down 15 there and then we clean up here. Okay, so for D states, calculate the electric current in the primary coil. If the secondary coil has a current of 16 amps, assume the transformer is 100% efficient. Show your working. Okay, so what are we asked to calculate? We're asked to calculate the current in the primary coil. So for this type of question, we are using this formula. Okay? Why? Because they even told you here to assume the transformer is 100% efficient. Now when a transformer is 100% efficient, this simply means that the power that is inputted is equals to the power that is outputted. Okay? Hence, if you check here, this is simply, let's really go through the formula. Vp simply means the potential difference on the primary coil multiplied by, remember from the previous video, I also told you that I stands for what? For current. So this is IP stands for the current on the primary coil. Then Vs is the potential difference on the secondary coil multiplied by Is, which is current on the secondary coil. Okay? Now with that said, let's do this that we did for the first example with this formula. Then we check again, what were we asked to calculate? We are asked to calculate the current in the primary coil. Now we know current is I. So are we going to use IP or are we going to use IS? Since we are told to calculate the electric current in the primary coil, we are going to use IP. Okay? But if it was on the secondary coil, we would have used IS. But now here it says primary coil, so we will use IP. So we go to IP and we put a question mark. Now this simply means the VP, the VS, the IS is somewhere on our diagram or in our previous question that we already answered. Because remember, with mathematics and physics, you do have carry on questions or answers. Okay? So with that said, what is our VP? We already have VP here. So we just write down the VP, which is 120. Okay? And then what is our IP? That's what we are looking for. And then VS, we calculated it in C here. So VS is 15 volts. Write that down. Then what is IS? Now IS is the current where on the secondary coil. So let's check. Do we have current here? Current. If it's not on the diagram and it's not here, we can go back to the statement and reread it. So calculate the electric current in the primary coil if the secondary coil has a current of 16 amps. So the IS is 16 amps. So we write that down. Now that we have all our other figures, let's make IP the subject of the formula in this formula. So I recommend you also memorize this formula, okay? Just in case they ask you something similar. So how do we make IP the subject of the formula here? Where do we see IP? It's over here. Now we want to have it alone on one side, but now it's multiplied to VP. So how can we cancel out this VP? By dividing by VP. Now remember, what you do on one side, you need to do on the other side. So we also divide that side by VP. Okay? So it will cancel out on the left hand side and you will be left with IP is equals to VS multiplied by IS divided by VP. So you ask yourself, what is VS? VS is 15 multiplied by, what is IS? IS is 16 divided by, what is VP? VP is 120. Okay, so if you work this out on your calculator, which is 15 multiplied by 16 divided by 120, it will give you 2 amps. And that's your final answer for D. Okay? So thank you very much for watching this video. Please do like, subscribe, turn on the notification button to be the first to see the next upload. Share with friends, family, and classmates. And remember, together we rise to higher heights, apart we all stay behind. Cheers.